Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Just Talk Live, and we are here today to listen to teachers. And I am happy to see my lovely co-host right here, Destiny Hodges. Hello, Destiny. It's really good to see you.
Hey Lee, how are you?
I'm good. I'm talking like I don't ever see Destiny. I've seen Destiny. I've talked to Destiny about 4 hours today, probably. But it's good to see you again always. And welcome to our guest. As I said, we are going to be talking to teachers because of the what is happening in our country right now. Education is in the news. It is something that is being talked about specifically when it comes to school reopenings in the midst of this pandemic. And we have educators here amongst us who aren't always listened to when these conversations happen at a leadership level. And so we felt that it is time that teachers are listened to speak to their experience and to speak to the things that are worrisome, to speak to ways in which we can get involved in what is happening right now. And we also have a colleague here as well from that work with Destiny and I, Alonzo Johnson, who can even speak to the theological aspect of this, how people of faith are called to get involved in this type of work. And so welcome, guests. We are going to start off by inviting each of you to introduce yourself. Oh, Destiny has something.
Sorry, Lee, to cut you off. Before we start our show, I just wanted, there's a couple of congratulations in order, right? First, we want to say congratulations to one of our panelists, Alonzo Johnson, on his recent engagement to Aisha Brooks Lytle. And congrats on that. And we wish you the best. And y'all are just the best Presby couple. So we're excited to get updates as you journey forth with the wedding. You know, you got to keep us posted on social media. We might have to bring them on, Lee, to do an episode exclusively. And also to you, Lee, my partner, congratulations on, I'm going to mix it up, being Reverend elect, right? Because you have passed to be ordained, and that's coming up in August. Do you want to speak a little bit about that before we dive into our episode?
So I will. I have been approved by the Presbytery of Middle Tennessee to be ordained to this position, to the managing editor of Unbound and the associate for young adult social witness for the PCUSA, and that is really different for my presbytery to do that. And so I am very grateful. I am very excited. It's been a long journey. It's been a journey of my whole life trying to discern my call to ministry and actually being a part of the denomination that affirms me and who I am and affirms that I am called to this ministry. And so I am very excited that in August that will all come to fruition and it will begin another journey to this. So thank you, Destiny, for mentioning that, and congratulations to Alonzo, a new chapter in his life. And so to our guests, we will invite you to introduce yourself, and we'll start. We'll go Rachel, Aaron, Tony, and Alonzo. How's that sound?
Hi, I'm Rachel Egabine. I live in Tucson, Arizona, which is a COVID-19 hotspot, setting world records. I mean, we didn't just top in the United States, we topped the world. Mm-hmm. So we have that going on. And then I teach 8th grade social studies in a Title I district. So the majority of my students are poor, receiving free and reduced lunch, and the majority of them are not white. And so the Black Lives Matter movement and anti-racism in the classroom has been a focus this summer, in addition to everything else, online learning, figuring out what the lack of leadership at the state level in Arizona means for this coming school year. And we start new teachers report tomorrow in our district. So lots going on.
I'm Erin Ergo. I am an instructional coach in the upstate of South Carolina, but taught middle school for 9 years. And this is my second year as an instructional coach. So I get to work with teachers 24/7 and I love it. But we are also a world hotspot here in the upstate. So I feel you there, Rachel, as we move forward and try to speak up amidst all this chaos.
Hello, my name is Tony Bawada. I am a staffing specialist for special ed department in one of our elementary schools here in Central Florida. I am also in another hotspot. So I'm very excited to be here. I've been an educator in education for 16 years, mostly has been high school special ed. So you can imagine how things are going right now, parents emailing and calling and how is things going to work. So it has been pretty stressful, especially when a plan, we still don't have an actual plan, concrete plan and so on. So I'm listening to teachers. I'm also listening to a lot of the parents right now. So yeah, so Central Florida, here we go.
And I'm Reverend Alonzo Johnson. I am the coordinator of the Self-Development of People Ministries of the Presbyterian Church. And I'm also the convener of the Educated Child Transform the World initiative of the Presbyterian Church USA. And in both of those particular roles, we are working closely with communities. In my role as convener of the Educated Child Initiative, we are working closely with teachers, ministers, folks who are directly engaged. Rachel is on our education roundtable, and so we are constantly in conversation with teachers about issues as they affect education and development.
Thank you, panelists. And thank you, Alonzo, for letting us know a little bit about the resources that we have in the Presbyterian Church and how we are engaged on the ground and within the communities. So this question is for the teachers, and Alonzo, please fit it in the broader context of the work that you're doing as well. What are some of the ways that you're seeing your school district shape this upcoming year, and what are your concerns? And I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the screen because I have to look to the side. So Lee, can you give the order?
Yeah, we'll do the same order every time. How about that? Is that cool? Awesome.
So my district, new teachers report tomorrow, and I also serve as a local union rep. So we're having conversations about what the new teacher orientation NTO looks like. Is it online? Our students report August 5th, and they're going to do it online. And we're going to start. The state of Arizona doesn't allow in-person schooling until August 17th. Does that have any science-based reasoning? No. It was just like we pulled the date out of the hat and said, here we go. And so it's really been frustrating for our district and districts in Arizona because we don't get timely decisions made. Our state superintendent of schools is negotiating with the governor. The governor holds a press conference, says nothing changes, and we're still stuck. So my district has had to go ahead and make plans and hope they fit with the governor's decisions, but also like we don't want to backtrack. So our district held off. Other districts in Tucson, where I'm at, made announcements, and then they keep having to re-announce and their changes. So I think that tension between do you announce and change, or do you hold off when you know and make one choice, has been really kind of confusing in Arizona.
My district in particular is one of the larger ones in South Carolina. So I do want to start by clarifying that we are in a very different boat than most districts in South Carolina that are much smaller and have very limited resources. My district, however, is all one-to-one already. So that has been a huge benefit in this case, which has provided us the opportunity to offer our students two options. So parents are choosing to go to this brand new virtual school and their students will be completely online all year. They will not step foot in a building, or they can choose to stick with their home-based school, so I'm gonna call it their normal assigned school, and be on this kind of sliding scale. So it goes from 0 days in person, where they will be at home e-learning, kind of like survival mode in March, except way more prepared this time. And then it goes to 1 day in person, 2 day in person, back to 5 day in person. Because the ultimate goal for everyone is to get back to 5 day. The goal right now, though, is how do we do that safely, which has been a huge debate like recently in South Carolina. But for my district in particular, they're really trying to give parents both options so that you have this flexible, but you got to understand that it's going to change on the weekly depending on COVID numbers. We'll jump from, we could be on 0 the whole first couple of weeks, and then we might try 1 day, and then we might have to go back to 0. So it just depends on our numbers and how they'll go. But some parents want to just say, nope, virtual all year. I'd rather stick with that and work around that. So we've kind of got 2 options in place in our district.
Well, in Central Florida, from my district, we're providing 3 different options. The first one is face-to-face, since our wonderful people in Tallahassee have said that we have to open schools, so we have to have brick and mortar. So we got 3 options. First one is brick and mortar, so schools open, kids go to school. The second option is a virtual school by the district. The only thing is that it cuts funding, so we would lose some teachers, over 1,000, depending on how many kids go on there. And then the last option, it's called Launch Ed at Home, which is students will stay home, they'll have a teacher, and they'll be learning regular schedule. So if you're in high school from 7:20 till 2:20, and at the same time, those students that their parents say, no, I want them to go to school, then they'll be in the classroom with that teacher. So there'll be a camera there, so students will interact with the students that are live in the classroom, along with those that are at home. There's still a lot of gaps, but those are the 3 options that we have provided, that we are providing. And we send out a survey, and some of the preliminary numbers right now says a lot of the parents are choosing the Launch Ed, which is their kid stays home, they have a teacher, they follow the regular schedule. So it has been a little frustrating because of the demand of no, school has to open. So that's where it comes in. But we're providing 3 different options. I'm just not happy that one of them is, opening the school. So.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Alonzo.
I was just going to say, here in Louisville, Kentucky, there were some conversations about what things would look like. Will it be a 3-day-a-week plan? My neighbor is a school teacher, and he railed in the driveway about the problems with this. And we talked about, all kinds of criminality and everything else that could possibly happen because of unsupervised children. But tonight, actually, the Jefferson County Public School Board is going to be voting on a plan that is a pretty good plan, actually. And the plan is that the Jefferson County school system will continue to use the online non-traditional instruction. They've kind of called it, so they're going to ramp it up a bit, and it's probably going to be a little more classroom-like. Unfortunately, for kids who are falling in the cracks with the digital divide, this probably does nothing. At the same time, they're going to make a determination after 6 weeks, and they will use science and data in conjunction with direction from local and state authorities as to how to move forward. So at least we're starting online, and we'll see what happens after 6 weeks. So it seems like it's so far. And we'll see if it gets voted tonight. And tonight, I think they're voting. Yeah. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's been an interesting past month, I would say, when it comes to education. Technically, we aren't supposed to be talking about specifics in administration working for the church, but we've already broken that in this show before.
But Alonzo, you don't have to. We
Yeah,
want to keep
so
you pure and holy.
we won't let Alonzo get in trouble, but we have spoken toward this administration, and we can speak to that and with the Department of Education on a federal level, and saying that funds have been threatened to be removed if schools are not to reopen. And to me, that feels like that schools are being held hostage and are being threatened to withhold funding that, for one, they hardly get to begin with, and two, um, that people in the school districts, not just teachers, not just students, but also custodial workers, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, all these people are going to be affected by these decisions. And so I just wonder, how does that make an educator feel? How does that make a public educator feel when we hear from an administration that says, we are going to put you in a dangerous situation. We're going to put your health at risk. And if you don't do this, we're taking your money away. And that money is probably going to go to a private institution to the trend that this administration has really lived into. And so that is my question to you. And I hope that this could be a space to kind of express how that makes an educator feel when they hear something like that happen, and when they hear rhetoric around that. And so we'll kind of start in the same order. If you want to speak to that, I wonder.
Sadly, I think this trend of defunding public schools is not new, especially in Arizona. And so more threats to funding. It's like my district has cut so much, like, and we try to keep it away from the classrooms and directing students directly, but that means we've cut counselors, we've cut social workers, we've cut teachers and made class sizes big. Like 36 is what I have in my class, 5 times a day. So every time I hear about funding cuts, and not just the rumors, but these really have, like, there's some power behind that, and my stomach just drops, because we're cutting more, and it's hurting the least of these. It's like my students of color, high poverty. You know, my city did a stress map a few years ago, and my district was like super stressful, and that's just the daily situation. And then you add on COVID, and you add on more budget cuts, and it's, you know, teachers, we keep saying we're resilient, we'll make it work, but how? Like, you know, I can't put 40 in my classroom. I physically can't. You know, on a good day, I can't, you know, teach when students have no food, they don't have electricity, like all those things, that the traumas that they have. And so, like, the cuts just frustrate me, because they're coming from a place of power, and it's willful, like, hatred at this point. Like, we're gonna screw over the least of these in our country.
Speaking of willful hatred, I can go follow that up. In South Carolina right now, if you know a public educator, please reach out to them and give them a hug right now. We have had a very, very rough couple of weeks on top of what's already been a chaotic time. So in the spring, when we completely left the buildings within 48 hours, had school up and running virtually across the state, whether that was packets or pickup or, you know, whatever. You know, we went from being praised for what felt like the first time in a long, long time for all the amazing work we did, to fast forward to now, in which 2 weeks ago, our governor, along with 2 other men who have between all 3 of them no experience in public education, and got up and pretty much gave us a D publicly for our efforts, and went on a long list of things we need to be concerned about with the students. Keep in mind, these are the things we marched about a year ago. And so that was a blow, for sure. And then it continued into, all these, if we cared, we'd be back 5 days, because we don't care as educators, when really we're the ones sitting here caring so hard that we can't even see straight right now, because we care about the safety of these kids, and we are looking at the data and we're looking at the numbers, and we're one of the biggest hotspots in the entire world. So it's super insulting to then feel like your own state saying you're not doing a good job, you're not doing enough. And if you cared about the kids in your classroom, you'd be there 5 days a week. Forget about your safety, forget about your family's safety, forget about your own situations at home, you would be there. And so that was a complete blow. And then yesterday, he spoke again and announced that 67% of the CARES Act funding that he has received will be going to private school vouchers. And so you want to talk about kicking you when you're already down. I laugh instead of crying right now. That's where teachers are at in South Carolina. We are at the point of just beyond frustration and tears. And we're very thankful that Molly Spearman has not been in attendance in the last couple. She's our state superintendent of education, and very, very thankful for her right now and standing up for what's right. And then Mike Pence was in South Carolina today to thank our governor for his push for the 5-day, and to thank him for his efforts of reopening the economy and things of that nature. So it has been 3 big blows in the last 14 days, I would say. So we're not in a good place. I don't think we're in a good place in terms of our, I feel like everyone's mental health is already a struggle right now, no matter what job you have, no matter what your home situation is, it's all just survival mode for a lot of people right now. So this is just adding more fuel to that fire. And, it's made it very clear where priorities lie with our leadership, or lack thereof, in South Carolina. So it's a very sad day for our kids, especially our kids in Title I schools that we are deeply worried about right now. But the schools did not close, just the buildings did. And I think that's what I'm getting really frustrated with, in that no one gets a D right now. Everyone's checking on kids and making sure they're okay. Nothing stopped, just because the building's closed.
I feel like exactly the same way. And the thing is, it upsets me when somebody says, well, if you don't open 5 days, then we're going to cut funding, federal funding. Okay, you cut federal funding to that one kid who's in a wheelchair, a kid that is in special ed classes, a kid that has a learning disability. So you're going to cut federal funding to that one kid who's learning the English language, because that's basically where the federal money, most of it, goes to. So for a political leader, or the Department of Education or governor should get up there and say, well, or even higher than that, to get up there and say, if you don't open 5 days, we're going to cut federal funding. That hurts. That hurt, because again, we are, and I know a lot of people hear this, but we are the most underpaid for the amount of work that we do. But when comments like that are made, you're basically, you're saying that we're nothing, and then they come in with the guilt trip of, well, kids need to get educated. That means that you don't care. Well, really, I mean, we're there from 7 a.m. to I know teachers that are at school till 9 o'clock at night, because we love what we do. And it hurts when you say, we're going to cut funding if you don't open. Right now, we push, they approve a push to start school the 21st of August. That means that teachers that were expecting that check at the end of August now get it at the beginning of September. So, and again, teachers get paid 10 months out of the year. So during the summer, we don't get paid. I know some states do it differently. Some states, they divide it into 12. So teachers are getting paid over the summer. So we have to save up our money for the summer. And now, unexpectedly, we gotta figure out what we're gonna do, because we don't get paid till September now. So again, there's so many things, and it's painful when money is used in this matter. So so yeah, that's where we're at. It's frustrating and it's hurtful, and I don't think they get it. I don't think they get it. So yeah.
I think what I'm hearing from fellow teachers is, and and what we're hearing today from our teachers who are on the front lines, who are dealing with these very issues. There is a sadness and grave concern, right? I think about Diane Ravitch, the educational policy analyst, who basically says the two issues with public school is concentrated racism and concentrated poverty, right? And so when we see that school funded, we know that it will exacerbate those issues. So then we have a triple pandemic, right, of poverty, racism, and also COVID-19. And we know, and this is the concern, the grave concern as to how do we, what are we going to do as teachers? What do we do as churches? What do we do as community members to address those issues that will be made worse by lack of funding? And those are the concerns that I'm hearing from teachers. The concerns I have definitely for my own child, who is 15 and in high school. And what happens if schools do not get the funding that they need? That means the educational pieces are at stake. Critical education pieces. I was listening today to this conversation about COVID-19 in education, and as one person in the conversation mentioned, was like, look, this is, schools no longer do RRR. There's no, or the reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? They no longer do those things. It's schools are also involved in feeding poor children. They're also involved in making sure that kids have kids are learning disabilities. And so what happens, just as Tony mentions, with kids who are who have learning disabilities or who are in special education, what happens? And we know that those issues are are going to be made worse in cuts, and that's of great concern. And that's the kind of, it's a pall for some of my teachers, that I and folks that I'm talking to. They're concerned. My neighbor's concerned. My teacher, he's like, what's going to happen with all this? And what happens to our young people?
Thank you, panelists. And I don't know if one of you want to speak on it. I know Rachel and Alonzo, you hit on it about the extra duties that come along with educating a child, not only the piece about just the education piece, but the financial implications, the basically hitting the Maslow hierarchy of needs first before you can start to feed into them and have them respond in a way that you can teach to them. Can one of you, or I can do it if you don't know, want to speak about how schools are funded and like around the tax space and your communities and what you're seeing? Because what Lee and I try to do is educate people as well. So some people might not understand. They might get it now from listening to you all that, okay, schools feed children, schools provide that extra set of care, but they don't understand, like, well, if everyone's getting cut, then, it's okay, it's equal. But how some schools don't have that funding piece or that foundation to begin with, and others are okay with getting cut. Can someone speak to that?
Okay, I'm on a Zoom call right now.
I don't know if I can speak to the larger picture, but I'll speak a little bit to a local level and what districts are doing. But a big part of why we are doing a virtual school within our district is because we will then be able to keep the funding for those students. So that's a huge benefit. But I know Tony mentioned something kind of the opposite of that. So I think it's very dependent on not only your state, but also your district as well. But I can tell you in South Carolina, students have been underfunded for over 12 years. That was a big part of the march last May. A lot of people want to say it was for teacher pay and of course, that'd be great, but it was about the fact that students have not been fully funded in over 12 years. That's an entire education span for some of those kids. And I know Lee has talked about, he remembers his district not being fully funded. So there's a lot of discrepancy between districts and how that and what money is received and how that works. But I think what COVID has done has thrown in our faces as a state how uneven it is between districts, because it's so different what different districts are able to do and provide to their students because of our resources and our size and how money is allocated. So who this is really in my head for bothering the most are those smaller districts that are already so underfunded. And we really, in mine, we are very blessed. I'm very blessed to be in a large district, but there's so many in our state, especially along that corridor of shame, that are already so underfunded, and that this is just putting it in our face as a state that we cannot fully meet the needs of these kids in a time of crisis.
So the thing that I talked about earlier about the funding is we have, our district has an online school. So that school gets funding, but it's not the same as a regular school. So they get, their funding it's cut probably about half, maybe, somewhere around there, because again, it's online, so they don't need as much funding. You need to pay the teachers and everything. So if everybody jumped into that virtual school, then that's less funding for the district, and that's when teachers start losing their job, because again, all the students are in this online platform, self-paced platform. So then they don't need as many teachers in the actual in the regular classroom. By offering this third option, it keeps teachers in the classroom, and we get full funding. So they don't even they don't cut our funding. It's full funding. Now I'm blessed. I'm in Central Florida. My school district is one of the largest. Teacher funding, teacher salary is not where it should be. Our students do have devices, and if a student lives in a community that does not have internet or anything, we do provide hotspots, and so on. But still, when you say cut funding, it hurts. Yeah, I mean, it hurts, especially for those, like we mentioned, those students. We do have the university close by, and they have opened up programs to help parents with the learning at home. So if parents have any questions or they need any ideas and so on, we do, our university here has opened up a program to help parents too. And that is, an extra help. And I think community, the community getting involved, that's the biggest thing. And if we can have community, if the schools are closed, but we have places of worship that want to open up space for kids to come, for the kids of those parents that have to go to work and social distance and do that. I mean, the community needs to get involved at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember growing up. I am a product of Chesterfield County Schools in South Carolina. And I remember sharing textbooks with my classmates because there wasn't enough. I remember the oldest computers you've ever imagined that were never updated. And we were the lucky ones too. I mean, my school was the lucky ones that we even had textbooks hardly. And Chesterfield County School District is very small, and because it's so small, the funding is lack thereof. But Chesterfield County is also one of the poorest counties in South Carolina, and just that threat of even the smallest amount of money that these school districts get, regardless, but then to say, we're going to take your money because you have chosen to keep your students safe. And in a moment of history that we are in now, it is also mind-boggling to me that we have public servants, people who are in the public servant realm, that are defunding the public, that their job has become to defund public services. And so that's very interesting to me too. But I also wonder, and Alonzo can probably speak to this some, that this show is a faith and justice talk show. And for me, this is a faith issue. When we're speaking about education, when we're speaking about the human dignity of all students being afforded the same all across the board when it comes to education. And so I wonder, as people of faith, as people who believe in the gospel, where do we find ourselves in this conversation? Because a lot of the times we don't have these conversations because it's political. It is a political conversation that we don't have. And so where do people of faith find themselves in this conversation? Because they are being affected by this. Where I'm from, there's a lot of religious people, a lot of Christians that say they're Christian. And you best believe we prayed in school. We did all that. But when it comes to this, they're silent. When it comes to this, a lot of voices they don't speak up. We can pray in school all day long. But when it comes to public funding, when it comes to all this, there ain't a word to be spoken about it. And so where are people of faith in this conversation? And we can ask Alonzo to speak to that, because I know he does a lot of work in that.
You know, that's a really good point that you lift up, Lee. I mean, I think the thing with education, especially from a biblical perspective, I think the very simple, the theological traces we have with education is it's Jesus saying, "Let the children come unto me," right? I mean, that's one, right? And so we have these motifs of God loving the least of these. We have these motifs of God blessing the children. Of course, in the Reformed tradition, and Rachel could speak a lot to this too, as she has some policy experience with the Presbyterian Church. In the Reformed tradition, we have a long-standing belief that education is important. This is who we were, right? Since the time of the Protestant Reformation. The idea being that education was important because people needed to be able to have that relationship with God by themselves, and they can do that and read by themselves. So there was the push to teach reading, to teach languages, to teach all the kinds of things, so that people can find freedom. So, especially for folks like John Calvin, the father of the Presbyterian tradition, the importance of education and faith. It's a really integral part of who we are. How do we grow in our faith is by education, reading, all those kinds of things. I know next week you're going to be doing some things with mass incarceration. When I was doing prison ministry, these were the kinds of things that the guys in prison they were like, look, I'm here now learning how to read so that I can grow in my faith. I'm learning how to read now because, I didn't do it when I was outside, and now here I am. And so I think that there's a liberating aspect to education. Education creates possibilities, right? This idea that education, especially for education's sake, is about growing and learning, and it fit perfectly within the confines of faith. But I think what happens is that, as we think about education as a political issue, people are not exactly wanting to attach faith to their political issues. That's a political thing, education. Who gets educated, the quality of education becomes a political thing. Destiny talked about it with tax bases. Is public school really public based on where people live? And so once those kind of political pieces get in, and because this is a political issue, education is a political issue, faith is a political issue. Jesus was a political individual. Now, partisan politics, but in the sense that there was questions about, whose lives get enhanced and what kinds of things need to be overcome for people to live lives of self-determination and be their best selves, right? So, and I think what happens is that there's a shying away because of politics. Well, maybe we shouldn't touch that because it has nothing to do with faith. It's more politics, districts, these kinds of things. But we know when it comes to young people, and we know, especially as we look at education now and what it symbolizes, it's no longer the 3 R's. It is about feeding children. It's about kids going to school so they can eat, right? I mean, it's about, no longer are we built on this, education is no longer built on a middle class platform. The assumption being that you go to school and then kids come home and then their parents supplement that other half of the education. Well, we can't always count on that. So, teachers are having to start from, tabula rasa, from point one. So, and we're learning it's about poverty. It's about, taking care. And so education and some of the issues of child advocacy, which I think are connected, is recognizing that, we are dealing with kind of existential lives of young people, that this is not just a political issue of districts, but this is about who gets to have access to quality education so that they can live lives of self-determination, and so those are the kinds of things, and getting people to understand that this is not about bipartisan politics, but this is about the politics of Jesus and the politics of young people, a God that affirms children. It calls us as people of faith to affirm children and the quality of lives for children, and education being a part of that. Loving our neighbors and loving one another. And it's making sure that all our young people have an opportunity, especially as we talk about race, especially as we talk about, the opportunities of, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color. And as Rachel talked about in her class setting and her, and the school in which she teaches, being able to have access to power, being able to have access to learning. So it transcends bipartisan politics. It's about the politics of existential lives for young people, all young people, not just Black young people, white young people, all young people. Because the reality is that the schools are the places, and whether we want to believe it or not, there's a certain amount, churches are responsible for morality, but there's a certain amount of socialization that's taught in schools. How do we live together? How do we talk together? How do we communicate? And those are the kinds of things that are really important. And if church folks have got to think about this, that schools are, our kids spend half their day, most of their day in school. And so, and we got to be thinking about what's happening there, how people are being affected. So it has a lot to do with our faith.
Yeah.
As
Oh, go ahead.
on policy and the PCUSA. So one of the hats I used to wear up until last month was, oh, Sam, I need to talk right now and then I'll listen to you, okay? Sorry, that's my rising kindergartner. Was as the co-moderator of the Advisory Committee on Social Witness Policy. If you are familiar with anything in the Presbyterian Church, social justice-wise, we have a policy on that. And my committee that I was serving on oversaw the creation. And I wanted to highlight one conveniently called Loving Our Neighbors, Equity, and hold on, I keep forgetting. Equity and Quality in Public Education K-12. So I really encourage everyone to check it out. They usually come with study guides. You could do, what does it mean to love our kindergarten through 12th grade neighbors, families? As you can see, I'm a parent juggling a kindergartner. This is what we're doing, as teachers, as parents who work, right? My child's hopping in. So take a look at that. That policy guides the Presbyterian Church's thinking on public education, strong pro public education. So we come out standing for public education, opposing vouchers, opposing school choice, those things that take money and funding and attention away from the public education in a very literal and intentional attempt to starve the public education and then call us failures.
Yeah, it's definitely a faith issue, and I think that having these types of conversations really do begin for other conversations to be had in churches, amongst leaders in faith communities, because a lot of those leaders are also teachers. A lot of those leaders also work in school districts. This is something that does hit every aspect of our lives in many ways. And so I hope that this is in some way a beginning of that conversation for church folk, for people of faith to really start to get involved in these types of conversations, because it is more than just prayer needs to be back in school. Like it is a deeper conversation that needs to be had about what actually needs to be back in school, and that is morality, a moral way of doing public education. And so I am glad that y'all are here having that type of conversation. And so I think, Destiny, do you have a question?
Yeah. And will this be our last question? We might be able to fit in closing remarks, maybe too.
Yeah. We also have a question from Facebook.
Oh,
So yeah.
Ask the question from Facebook.
Okay, so we have a question from Facebook, and then Destiny has a really good question to ask at the end, and we'll close with that. But our dear sister Ville Marie, who if people don't know Ville Marie is a former co-moderator of the Presbyterian Church USA. So she's kind of a big deal, former educator, teacher, and a really awesome colleague and a friend of this show. She's been on a couple times. So Ville Marie does ask us, in these 3 school districts that you all represent, who are the ones that have been consulted to establish the guidelines for the school year? So who have been consulted in that decision? And we'll go in the same order: Rachel, Aaron, and Tony, to speak to that.
I hate to say my district has, I'm lucky. I've got a superintendent and a school board that cares about staff as much as they care about the students. So our superintendent, I'm going to shout him out, Steve Holmes, and the school board consulted the teacher group, the union that represents the teachers. We've been in conversation with Mr. Holmes since June, probably longer than that, at least once a week. The classified union has been in conversation. Admin, the public health officials, our state government leaders, our state superintendent of schools has been active kind of behind the scenes, exercising her power, but as a member of the opposite political party of the governor has been stymied. So in my district, it's been a collaborative effort led by our excellent superintendent.
Mine's kind of in 2 parts. So as a district, I feel like they've done a phenomenal job of getting feedback from teachers, but also parents, and getting a feel for where everybody is before really coming out with the final decision. So I do feel like as a district, our voices have at least had the option to be heard. But if we look at the state level, South Carolina created an Accelerate SC committee. They, as far as I know, pulled in a few teachers from around the state. So I don't want to say they did not pull teachers. It was a very limited amount, I believe. But that's also why it was so upsetting 2 weeks ago when the governor said, forget everything the Accelerate committee said that I want the districts to do. We're gonna push for 5-day instead. So that whole committee that had the teachers pulled in to get some feedback and really put out a plan for districts to follow to come back safely, that all of that just got pushed to the wayside. So that was why we're having such a political debacle right now. But I will say, as a district, our voice has been very much heard.
We just recently, last week actually, they did 2 meetings. They just came up with a plan that was submitted to the state for approval of the 3 options that we talked about. And while they were having that meeting, they realized that they forgot to survey teachers to see who wants to go back. So they just sent out a survey to the teachers, trying to get an idea of who's going to come back to the classroom, who's wants to do digital and not come back, and so on. And then they survey, because they kind of survey the parents, but I guess they wanted more information. So they just surveyed the parents again, who's going to send their students back to school and so on. Next week, they're actually meeting because they are going to vote on having a medical advisory board to help them make decisions of, if they need to close completely or or how they need to do it and procedures at the school still. The it has been somewhat, our voices have somewhat been heard. There's plenty of room for improvement in that area, but I mean, they're on the right, they're getting to the right spot where they need to be and so on. So that's where we're at.
And Alonzo, I don't know if you had anything to add on or wanted to talk in your local context about that with Educate a Child.
Not too much to add on, but I think that, and what I'm hearing too, is something that I think is really important. It's going to really take kind of all hands on deck, right? What is it going to mean to bring everybody together to make this these issues and make this work? The complexity. I mean, the one thing I keep thinking about as we talk about schools being closed and open and all these kind of complex issues is complexity. How complex this is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what happens if kids go to school? How far are they sitting apart? What about older kids? Do they change classes? Is that a good thing? So what's going to be the all hands on deck kind of approach? Talking to, just as we're hearing from these incredible teachers about talking to the parents, getting a sense of how people feel. You know, what are the governors doing? What are the mayors doing? What kind of funding decisions are being made? The other big thing I'm thinking about too is, what about corporations? Dell, Microsoft, you know, what kind of, you know, as we see, Comcast was doing some things with the community to make affordable or to at least provide internet service. What are the, you know, what are the corporations, both local and you know, and national, going to do to be a part of the educating of our children? Not so much that these corporations can be involved in the public sector, but they certainly can work in concert with the communities to make something happen. Tony said something really powerful a while ago about the church's responsibility. What will the church do? We're talking in Educate a Child about, so do we create you know, virtual tutors? How does this stuff work? I mean, how do we all have how do we have an all hands on deck approach so that whatever happens, we're able to triage that in a way that we can seek wellness as much as we possibly can. So, you know, that's, I mean, and that's what I'm hearing, and I'm excited about that, because we have teachers that are thinking about that, the parents and all the other folks who are involved in these decision-making processes.
Thank you, panelists. So this is our closing remarks last question, and it kind of fits to be closing remarks. As you know, or may not know, because a lot of you are first-time guests, that this talk show or this space was developed for young adults and young people, and we would be very shameful to not give an encouraging word back to the young adults. So I will ask one of you, along with your closing remarks, what would you like to say to current students that are coming in this year, current fellow teachers that are coming in, to give them a word of encouragement, give them a word of hope, inspirations, and also any final thoughts that you have to share with us or resources? And we'll go in the same order that we've been going in.
I think what I would tell my students is just keep going. Tomorrow's a better day. Just keep going. This will not last forever. And then what do I tell my community? I think I tell my community the same thing. Let's be creative. How do we do this social distancing? How do we do it safely? Now's the time for some really creative thoughts, and that's where I'm at. Sometimes it's hard to see, but let's just keep going. We'll show up tomorrow.
So to teachers, I would say, first of all, we know we can do it. We pick up ourselves and we do it every day. You know, it's just one more direction we got to go. But I feel like if we can pull off March, we can do anything. So we're going to get through it, and we're going to be okay. And we're going to do what's best for the kids, because it's what we do. But I also want to encourage them to use their voice. I feel like teachers tend to be very hesitant for various reasons that are valid to feel comfortable, but this is not a time to sit silent. This is not a time especially as Christians, to sit silent and watch all of this funding go and be taken out of the hands of our kids that are in the most need. So that is very, very important to me. And I'm very excited about how vocal I've seen some teachers that are usually very quiet, have come out this week pretty loud. So that has given me some hope. To students, we love you. We miss you. And we just can't wait to see you again, whether it's virtually or 1 day or 2 day or 5. But we will see you, and we will take care of you no matter what capacity we are allowed. But to the community, along the lines that have been mentioned, we need you to get creative, and we need you to help us, because it continues to be pushed that our job as educators is to hold the entire economy in our hands. And we can't do it all, especially when funding continues to be taken away from us. So yes, we feed the kids. Yes, we educate the kids. Yes, we check on the kids. Yes, we, get all of this hierarchy of needs, but we can do it. But the more that funding is taken away, the harder our job becomes, and the less we get to actually teach, which is what we've been hired to do. So that is super important, that I think the community remembers that while, like Alonzo said, it's not the 3 R's anymore. I think a lot of parents especially have their version of school in their head. And I can tell you right now, as a teacher of 10 years, it's not even the same as it was 5 years ago, especially not the same as it was my first year teaching. 2020 does not look like it did in 2010. So whatever your memories are of school, I really push you to talk to teachers that are in the front lines today, because I promise you, they will share 10 concerns they have for August that you probably haven't even considered, because teaching is just so different than it was even 5 years ago. So please reach out to the teachers, reach out as a community member, brainstorm as a church, how you can support these kids, whether it's after school, whether it's kids of teachers that go to your church that are there at school. And so their own kids are supposed to not go on those days, or, we've got all kinds of situations across the country. So really just getting creative as a community so that it's not all falling on the schools.
To the community, I say, please know that we love teaching and we love our students, and we want to be back with our students. We miss them. We miss listening to the stories. At the same time, we're worried. We're worried for our health. We're worried for the health of, some of us teachers, like my aunt who lives with my grandparents. She's worried. And it's okay to be worried, but please understand that we're worried. We talk about it takes a village to raise a child. Well, this is the time to step it up. So we're, calling out churches, community centers, all these places, the whole community. This is the time where we stand up and we do something about it. Don't leave it in the teacher's hands only. Don't put that pressure on the teachers. We're already, we come home and we're thinking of our students the whole time, and we're thinking what we're going to do next. Funding cannot be on top of us also. So I think it's important for the community to open your mouth, go ahead, email, call, do whatever you need to do, come up with ideas and work together. And for those new teachers that are, that are at school and are going to be new teachers, remember to stand up for your students, but also don't forget yourself. You are important. The job is it's crazy. And we sometimes focus on our students, but don't forget yourself also. And it's important for you to stand up for yourself at the same time.
I just agree with our incredible teachers, Aaron and Tony, in that they also issue a challenge to the church to take care of teachers. And I agree with Aaron. I think it's so important that the church understands it has to support its teachers. And one of the things that Educate a Child, as Rachel can attest, we're talking about this. How does the church support its teachers? I think Aaron also lifts up, I concur 100% about being creative. How are we creative in this time? Many of our churches have gone online, have never been online before. We're finding new and creative ways to be community. And I think the same thing with our churches. How do we support our parents? I am actually, I've always been, but I'm 100% for a full double, triple, even quadruple raise for our teachers having to stay home with my 15-year-old and teach my 15-year-old, who basically I am like the teacher she hates the most, right? But one of the things that's been really powerful in that, how everything changed when her teachers got on the Zoom call and began to affirm her, and the whole thing changed. And so, we have to affirm our teachers, we have to affirm our young people, but we have to affirm, church has to be involved. Our communities have to be involved in being creative, helping, supporting. And I agree with Aaron and Tony. I think it's got to be a community effort, and we can't. I saw a meme that said, it's not teachers' responsibilities to be saving children's lives. It's not their responsibilities to do the kinds of things that we expect them to do. And they get angry when they don't happen, when our model is built on a communal involvement. So I definitely agree with Aaron and Tony about this. How do we church work with teachers? How do we support our teachers in our schools?
Well, amen to that. And thank y'all so much. I have a special place in my heart for teachers, because if it wasn't for teachers, where would we be? Affirming teachers, the teachers that affirmed us and loved us, teachers that, when we couldn't be affirmed by our family, there was teachers that were there to affirm us and do that, and to be a part of that work. And so we want to thank you for the work that y'all do. Y'all don't get thanked enough, and society doesn't thank you enough for the work that you do every day, for the kids and the youth in this country. And so thank you for being there for kids and for teenagers in awkward times and all those things. So thank you for joining us to this evening, because this was wonderful. And I'm glad that this was a space for y'all to have this conversation. And I think Destiny is going to talk about what's coming up next week.
Yes, thank you, Lee. And also thank you to not only our panelists, but the teachers who are maybe watching this or will watch this in the future. We appreciate your creativity, your resiliency, and thank you. As Alonzo said, it's not your job, but you have been given a great task to educate our youth. So we hope that you stay tuned for next week, as we will be inviting Contrail Jackson, who was represented by Brian Stevenson, who was wrongly accused and put on death row. And we will be talking to him about his book and also a little bit about his role in Just Mercy, that movie that is so widely spread about Brian Stevenson. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, because we have someone coming on our show. And also we will have two people talking about Josh Beckler and Stacey Rector about mass incarceration in death row. So please come back and visit us at Just Talk Live, a faith and justice talk show, and stay tuned for next week. And if you have any questions that you want to ask of our guests, please feel free to email Lee or I, or message us on Unbound. And also, thank you for tuning in tonight.
Thank y'all, and we'll see you next week.